it's Sam Burt here from SampleLiveReview.com, and today we're looking at David Forner's Lux Violin, which covers everything you might want in a solo violin and then some. This very natural sounding library showcases numerous articulations including multiple legatos, rebows, plenty of dynamics and up to 12 round robins. It's all packaged in a really simple one-page Kontakt interface that lets you get straight into the action. Now, David Forner is somewhat of an enigma with no website, no social media, and as far as I can tell, only one place, Loot Audio, where you can actually buy his libraries. However, even with such a low profile, his work got on our radar here at Sample Library Review simply through community word of mouth, with folks raving about the previous release, Barbarian Cello. Prior to this, he put out a couple of really impressive guitar libraries geared for ambient music and underscore. But it's been his recent forays into strings that have really ignited excitement in what he does. His latest library, Lux Violin, replicates the deep sampling from Barbarian Cello and gives us a highly expressive solo violin. First impressions are of a lively and fully featured scoring tool. It's bold and streamlined with no mic options and centrally panned. Whilst it can certainly work as a solo violin in the traditional sense, it's clear that the idea was to create a violin library that can work equally well outside of a classical orchestral context, with minimal fuss and maximum emotion. Lux Violin is a 7.5GB download via Pulse. It runs in the full version of Kontakt 5.8.1 and above. There are 20 articulations. We've got 3 legato types, each with 2 transition speeds. It features rebows for legatos and longs. We've got up to 5 dynamic layers and 12 round robins depending on articulation. The special split and morph modes, and 1 uniform mic signal included. We'll play through each articulation in turn, starting with the legatos, which offer 3 varieties: lyric, medium and soft. Each legato type has 2 transition speeds that respond to your playing. Shorter transitions were recorded up to a perfect fourth apart, making it seamless to shift from the standard legato to one that is nimble enough to handle runs and fast arpeggios. The result is something really impressive, helped by only having a single dynamic layer, though it arguably loses some expressiveness in the process. Instead, we get 3 independent legatos, from high intensity to soft. A major selling point made by the developer is the same note rebows for legatos and the longs. Up to 5 variations extracted from performed phrases. I used to do this and I found it superb. Simply play the same note in quick succession and there it is, intuitive and effective. Additionally, a low velocity under 80 triggers a standard natural attack, and a harder key press gives an accentuated start to the note. Here are some examples of all 3 legato types utilising the features I just mentioned. You can hear there the lyric legato being the most expressive with the loudest dynamics, a more languid attack, slower legato transitions and plenty of vibrato. Medium is more of a workhorse legato with a comparatively lower dynamic and less vibrato, while soft is wispy, gentle and beautifully fragile. Should you want to combine them in a composition, there are key switches a few octaves down to facilitate this, Alternatively, by command clicking any of them, it will map the three dynamics to the mod wheel at the risk of some phasing in the transitions and crossfades, so essentially all three can be combined into a single patch. I only discovered this in a video for Barbarian Cello. We really need a written manual here, as features like this can get missed otherwise, and scanning through a video walkthrough is not so effective. Anyway, next up are the longs. They share the same attack variation as in the legatos, and there are plenty of them to explore. There's certainly some more experimental things going on there alongside the standard stuff, with tremolo to sul ponta highlight for more textural use. This also goes in the reverse direction with the lower velocity key press. The more delicate nature of the flautando and harmonics reveal the close and detailed miking especially well, and the addition of a long marcato is a nice touch, as it's not as common as the typical short marcato, but very useful in creating long notes that have a real point on them. All the longs employ the rebow feature, apart from the hard to replicate but wonderfully pulsing overpressure sul ponta articulation. There are also some really useful swells in two different speeds, with a short swell having a slow attack variant too. It's always a welcome move when libraries include swells, as you can never really get the same effect purely riding the mod wheel. That's really great stuff. And they also share the same rebow functionality, but this time it cleverly uses the correct one, whether you play it on the crescendo portion or at the peak of the swell. Thus you don't end up with the swell basically starting again. Finally, we have 5 shorts, all extracted from performed phrases, and as such exhibit a very lively feel. With up to 12 round robins and 5 dynamics recorded, as you can hear, these sound especially natural for ostinatos and phrases with lots of repeated notes. That staccatissimo is really powerful, and I look forward to trying that laid with some ensemble shorts to really bring out the attack. My favourite of these shorts, however, is the pizzicato. It just feels so energetic, and you can really hear the warm woody tone of the instrument. Short strings always tell us most about the space used for recording in a library. And with Lux Violin, we are talking about a close mic'd room sound. It's fairly dry, so will take well to your own choice of reverb, but there's also a short and neutral ambient tail from the room, so it's not totally sterile. Indeed, it's a bold move these days having a baked-in mix, and to an extent it does limit the scope of the library and the individuality you could get from dialing in your own custom mix. On the flip side, it keeps the hard drive space required and RAM load down. David seems to have made a conscious choice here to go in heavy with the rebows, round robins and a very comprehensive range of articulations, with a more streamlined approach regarding the mic options. The interface is very clear, and to cut down on RAM there are also patches included that only load a single articulation. I really love the info bar here, which does what all such libraries should do, and that is to include the delay values, so you don't have to go manual digging or website hunting for them. It also reveals a couple of extra options. Split mode will divide the keyboard up to enable 2 articulations to be played at the same time, one in each hand, with the dial that then becomes available to designate the split point. By contrast, the morph mode will layer 2 articulations to play simultaneously, allowing us to create unusual combinations. CC2 by default fades between them, which is a very neat touch indeed. The cog icon here takes you to the preference page to configure CCs and the curve used for velocities. Note that the curve is not related to the mod wheel as other libraries sometimes do. The rest is pretty standard, with potentially useful range expanders, a stereo width knob, a low pass filter and a reverb. The most important of these funk controls is the offset, which can help reduce the latency inherent across the library. Higher values result in a more instant feel under your fingers, and I would typically play in with this pretty high, around -80 milliseconds, and then reduce it to 0 for playback, so the full extent of the legato or the attack is preserved. Of course, it can be left further up to help manipulate the legato for super quick runs, or to chop tighter into the short note starts. Whatever offset you use, be sure to subtract this from the articulation specific delay detailed in the info section when you input this into your DAW track to compensate, so your MIDI stays bang on time. The interface is mirrored in David Forner's previous Barbarian cello. This exhibits the same raw, intimate feel and flexibility of Lux Violin, along with the large number of articulations. This now comes with a matched key switch patch, making it easy to use both together. And as we never reviewed it at the time, I'll give you a taster of it with a brief legato passage, some textural longs and some shorts. Lux Violin follows up Barbarian cello exceptionally well. It's an easy to use all-round workhorse of a solo violin library which competes with and arguably surpasses offerings from the big developers in this field. The violin performance, the recording and the programming are of the highest order. The library is not without shortcomings though, and some users may lament the requirement for the full version of Kontakt. No manual, the single mic mix and the lack of dynamic layers in the legatos. However, in practice it just works, and this immediacy of use and incredible consistency will keep me coming back to it again and again. The legatos are so playable and emotive, which makes it inspiring under the fingers, and those rebows are awesome. Not to be overshadowed, the shorts are tight and lively, and the longs beautifully performed and comprehensive. There's even room for some more left field articulations, sublime swells and some creative playing modes too. It's not often we find a relatively unknown indie developer tackling such a difficult instrument to sample and doing it at a world-class level, and I'm really looking forward to more from the very talented David Forner. If you're on a quest for a comprehensive solo violin, then Lux needs to be right there near the top of your shopping list. I hope you enjoyed this review of David Forner's Lux Violin. Please like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and be sure to check the website samplelibrereview.com for more reviews and the weekly deal compressor. Leave us a comment below and let us know if you think this is the best solo violin library out there. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.